Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you checking out our channel again today. If you are new here, my name is Yvonne and I do this with my husband Chris. We take thrift store found items and we make them over here on our channel and we share the process with you of how we get these items ready to resell, and we resell them here locally at a local antique mall. So in today's video, I am attempting some IOD molds again. Unfortunately, after my first showing, my first video of doing IOD molds, I was already in the process of doing more. I had ran out of the IOD clay and had realized that all clays are not created equal, you guys, all those air dry clays. So I had a little bit of struggles in this video, but I want to share that with you because this is what happens. We are creating, we're DIYing, we're crafting. So I not only want to share the good outcome and how to work through it, how to just, see the vision, just keep the end vision. Instead of throwing it off to the side because you get frustrated, I want to share with you how I worked through that. So that's what today's video is all about. I'm checking out some wooden items to put some IOD mounds on. And like I said, now I know the tips about the baking or the cornstarch to the baking powder, how to dust it on, not pour it on like I was doing, and then how to glue it, why it's still not set up. So that would have been tips that would have been great for this video, but unfortunately I did not know them then and it was already done. I'm not redoing a video, filming a video just to film. I rather go through the bumps with you all and share the process of how I worked through that to see the end results. So stay tuned, guys.
So here are some of the little cubby boxes that I'm going to be working on today. Now the one in the middle I thrifted for $7.09 at my local Goodwill, and the other two were actually given to me by a friend. Though this is, I believe, a Hobby Lobby piece. It's got good bones, good structure to it, but I definitely don't like that 6 little insert that's in the middle of it. There was just something about these magazine holders. They're just the simplicity, that blank plate on the front. I absolutely love the little handles, and then a $2.09 price tag and a $3.99 price tag. I thought they were priced perfect for this. So sometimes when I'm thrifting items, it's a grab or go. I looked at that $2.09, I looked at the shape, I just love the shape, but then I didn't notice the brokenness until I got home. So I'm like, okay, what can I do? How can I fix this? Yes, I could build this up with some epoxy, I could build it up with some wood filler, but just for a base, because it actually is pretty deep, I thought I'm just gonna glue a couple pieces of this tongue depressor on it and then cut that into the shape and then fill it over with some wood filler just so it had a little bit more structure to it. So I'm just using some of my CA Starbond glue just to get these pieces glued on first. And actually, yep, I had to do both sides of this piece, and there was a little corner of another one of these little feet. But actually, these pieces themselves were the 3 pieces, so I'm almost matching up to what was already there. And then after they've sat there for a little bit, I'm just going to take a razor blade. That tongue depressor is not a very thick wood, so I wanted to make sure that they were good and attached first, and then I'll just go and kind of try to shape it to the round shape. After getting the most material off with the razor blade that I could, I'll just go in with my little Black & Decker point of that and just get that kind of more sanded, a little bit more smoother and a little bit more rounder. And then I'll go in with a little bit of the wood epoxy just to make sure that it's filled in to the right level as the other 3 legs are. So this is just one of those that it's got the 2 compounds. I'm not a chemist, so I just need a little chip of it off, and then you hand mix it in your hand. You'll feel that it's warming up. And then after getting it all mixed up and the 2 colors become one, I'll just go ahead and put it on the area I need it to be, smoothing it out as best as I can so I don't have as much sanding to do after it dries. Now on this crate cubby, right off the bat, I'm going to be removing this handle. So the 6 divider in the inside is brad nailed on, so it's not really that I can take a jigsaw and cut it out. So now just taking a hammer and I'm just going to go to town, hopefully not hurting the outside package that I want to keep. But yep, I'm just going to see if I can get these pieces of wood loosened up and loosen up those nails and pull this insert out. Well, I managed to accomplish that, but now I just need to go back in with my little puller here and pull out any of those brads that got left behind. And I don't want the next person that owns this to know that I got rid of the insert, because maybe they would have liked it. I don't know. So I'm going to go in with some of the spackle and go ahead and fill in those holes where the brads were. And since I'm not quite sure how the details will be at the end, there's a couple little areas that you can see where they were nailed together that will be details that will show up when I finish painting it. So I'm going to go ahead with some of this. It's supposed to be that pink spackle that turns white, but my can, after about halfway down, it's just so hard to get that lid back on a lot of times. So it's already halfway dried, but it still works. So as I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I got some brokenness. I guess that this must have been dropped and the handle was keeping it together. You didn't notice it. So I'm just going in with some of the really thin Starbond glue, and then so it'll kind of make a little bit of a mess, but I know the crack is all the way through, but not enough that I need to get Titebond glue out and get it clamped together. It's not that very lightweight wood, so this will be a nice in-between fix. So what it does is you put that CA glue, the thin stuff, it'll run through probably all the way to the other side, but that's okay because I can sand it off. And then you put the accelerator in it and it dries it in 15 seconds. So, and you can keep putting multiple layers and it'll fill the hole in. And then I just took some of the spackling to make sure that it was nice and covered up. And then after it's dry, I can go in and just sand it so it is smooth. And then that epoxy is now set up so I can go over and get that sanded smooth also. And as I'm sanding on this, I'm realizing I don't think I like this paint job. What I thought was just one coat of paint that I was just going to be sanding off, which it didn't really sand off the front and the sides or the bottom so much, as all of a sudden when I was like, oh, well, there's a little chip right here. The next thing I know, it was just peeling off the inside. And literally, I'm just taking this razor blade, and as you see, it's just coming right off. So, yeah, that's what I did to the entire inside of this cubby, is I just used the razor blade, and it just came right off in sheets. So that I achieved the smoothest paint job on this little cubby that was a little bit on the needy side. Some of the paint did come off. Some of it was multi-layers of paint. It looks like it's not smooth, but it is. But just because there's different porosities in areas, I'm going to do a couple coats of shellac, and that's going to even out the porosity, how this item will be taking the paint to give the smoothest paint job at the end. So this box, as you heard me say earlier, was given to me by a friend. And so, of course, I'm like, I really want this to fit. It's almost one of those caddies. The hole is rather, unfortunately, on the big side. Any of my spindles were the same thing. They were too skinny. But look at this one, almost fits. I'm like, okay, so what can I do? I know sometimes I think my husband thinks I am completely crazy. So I was looking at our box of finials and our legs. And yes, weirdly, I had these eggs. Yep. Hey, why not? I do things for Easter. But the finials just looked like Shrek ears to me. So I just could not put those on there. And actually, yes, unfortunately, weirdly enough, the two little eggs actually look the best to complete this piece. So I know that Chris thought I was a little bit crazy, but look, it does. It looks like it's a completed one flowing handle on there, other than we have to figure out how to fill in these holes. So first things first, I'm going back to that CA glue. I'm going to put a bead of glue around the inside of this. This was a random thrifted item that I had picked up. This is the second one of the 3 pieces I'm using. They were like $2.99 for the 3 pieces, so for $1 a piece. And so Chris sprayed the bottom, the pointy part of the egg. So I'm putting it in there. I'm trying to keep it as level because you only have 15 seconds. And then I'm going to put another bead of the CA glue around the outside of it to make sure that this piece is nice and secure. I don't know about you all, but once it's painted, it's definitely not going to look like I stuck eggs into a rod at all. So now that that's glued together, I'm going to stick it into through those holes. I'm going to try to attempt to get it nice and even. See, it almost fits. It's almost a tight fit. So I'm going to get it level where it is, and then I'm going to take some more of that CA glue. At first, as you saw, I cheated and I used some masking tape to hold it in place because it kept sliding on me. So then you use your resources and use what you can. So I'm going to go in with some more of that CA glue because it's a nice quick fix. It's going to hold that in place. Now, yep, I probably could have left it as is, but it's quite a deep well there on both the inside and the outside. So I'm just going to mix up some of the Durham water putty to a thicker consistency. And yep, I'm just going to go ahead and fill in that and make that as smooth as I possibly can. And then this is what it looks like as it's all dry after it sat up overnight. You just have to trust the process. So now I just need to get everything clean. And so if my go-to is just super clean, just spray it on, wipe it off, and it'll get any of that grime, grease, anything that was left on these items taken off. You want a good prep surface so you know that your paint's going to stick well. And yep, as you see, yep, that super clean works well. Okay, now I can finally get to the fun part of playing. Yep, there's just that work that has to be done on these thrifted items so you can get into the playing. So I'm going to be trying out some more of the IOD air dry clay molds to do some little bling, some little details, some little accents on these cubbies. So on my last project, I used up all my IOD air dry clays. So you have to order on the internet around where I live. So being impatient, I just ran to Hobby Lobby and I was looking for some similar that I had. And I ran across this tub, not knowing anything about air dry clay, not knowing the difference in air dry clay, new to molding. This is my second attempt only. So I cornstarched dusted powder inside the mold, and so I'm using this clay. Now I will tell you that this clay is rather on the wet side, so this will be interesting. So doing the same thing I did before. I know you're all that had helped me out on my last video. Remember, I was doing this video before the other video processed and was aired to you all, that you shared all the tips. So I will get better, but you know, I just wanted to test out and try out some different air dry clays while I was waiting for my order to come. So this is when I realized that, oh, all air dry clays are not created equal. This was really hard to get out. It was so moist and so wet that it just really, I struggled. I was able to get the flower out. And then I went on, I wanted to make a couple leaves for this cubby also. So just grabbed another hunk of the air dry clay. And then I'm just working it in with my fingers, taking off the excess. Now this has a little bit of just a little stem, so I'm just packing it in there, doing the best that I can. Hey, you know what? We all cannot be experts on stuff our first time. We all have to, unfortunately for me, I have to learn by failures or learn by mistakes. I guess that's how we learn the best, for me anyway. So I'm just pushing it in there, then I'll roll it in, making sure that I get the excess off. And then the same thing, I flipped it over. I worked it very gingerly, trying not to see it. It did not want to release, so I just had to help it along just a little bit. I was a little worried about the stem, but I figured, you know, I'm going to be painting it, I can fix that. So then I proceeded to move on to the sunflower. So as if it wasn't bad enough that the air dry clay was actually too wet, when I got into making this mold, I kid you not, I forgot to put any kind of cornstarch in there to release it. So that was already going to make it a hot mess. So I had to take some time and dig it all out of the crevices. And then remembering this time to put the cornstarch in. So now that I've got it dusted with cornstarch, I can go in with the air dry clay, and then I'm going to try to work it down with my fingers, rolling it a little bit, trying to get it into all those beautiful petals of the sunflower. Now, luckily, I had used plenty of cornstarch that I do think that this helped this release. It was not easy to get it to release. I was really worried about the individual petals. So, yep, I really had to work hard to try not to get it to break, but it was still wet, so I could put things back together. But as you see, the petals were really sticking, but I did somehow, the grace of God, manage to get this sunflower out of that mold. So my plan for this was to put, I love these sunflowers, so since this was a free little crate that I had gotten, I really wanted to put the sunflower on each side of this. But one, the struggles of making this sunflower, not enough clay, and two, I was like, oh, it's a little bit too big. So then I made the executive decision to cut it in half. Have you ever heard of it's just a glutton for punishment? Yeah, I probably was doing that. But actually, I did get it working very gingerly. Like I said, this Crayola brand is way too wet for what the project is that I'm doing. So I just started right off in the center, trying to eyeball where my center was. As you see, I dipped my knife tool into cornstarch so that that clay was not sticking to it. And yep, and proceeded to cut it in half. So I really wanted to do these molding pieces. So my first attempt with the air dry clay from Crayola brand was not good at all. So then I remembered that I did have some of this from when I did my first canisters, remembered where it was. I don't know about your all craft room, but sometimes your brain has to take a moment. I knew that this would not be enough for all the projects I wanted to do. That's why I went to Hobby Lobby, and I could not find this. They were out of it at Hobby Lobby. So remembering to cornstarch this, but I will share with you after I finish this one, or why I'm in the process of this one, how that other air dry clay did not work at all. So when I got that Crayola brand air dry clay in there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not even releasing. And yes, I did put cornstarch on it, but this was actually my first attempt. I started right off with this mold when this was, I opened that package and it was just really, really too wet, and yeah, there was no way I was going to get this out or make it salvageable, big word, at all. It was just not going to work. So yep, epic fail. Hey, they happen. Now I'm back to the other, and I'm just working. I couldn't get this to roll in the way that I wanted to roll in, so I ended up just doing little pieces at a time, trying not to overfill it, trying to press it down with my little rolling pin, and then going over the whole entire thing. That was really stuck together, and I didn't feel like it was going to fall apart. And then I will tell you, this was like heavenly, as easily as it came out of the mold this time. And then it was very easy to go back in and just cut off the excess. But now I know about the edges, guys. No worries. I will get better at this. So I wanted one of these for both sides of this crate. So look at how much better I got even with my second try. Yes, the clay does matter. Okay, so actually I had to make 3 of them because when I put them on the crate where I was thinking I wanted them, nope, they were not long enough. So I'm going in and slicing what I needed off that third one. So now I need another sunflower. So nope, I did not go back to the other. I think I have plenty of this other clay that I'm going to be using. So me sharing this video is not to scare anybody off from using molds. It's just sharing with you how I just worked through the problems with some other air dry clay that didn't work quite as well as I wanted it to. So now I think I have enough to finish my project off of the other clay. So I need some of the flowers. I need a bigger one and then 2 of the smaller ones. So God wink moment that I remembered that I had that clay, that where it was, and that I had enough to finish up these projects. And then you can definitely tell the difference. So maybe I will share with you, I wasn't really stressed. I knew that it was clay. I knew that I could start over again. I knew that with the wetness and my experience, I could have just added cornstarch to it to take some of the moisture off of it. You just have to trust in the process. Look at what the end results is going to be. So here, all my pieces and parts are all done. They're sitting on their projects waiting to be glued. Now I know after my first video that I could have already had these gluing on, which actually would have been a little bit better because I think they would have laid a lot flatter, especially those half sunflowers that I couldn't really lay them on. So this is my next morning. I am now proceeding to move them off the the press and seal, excuse me, and start to glue them on their objects. So I'm just using some E6000 to glue these on. Now I do think I might have used a little bit of the Starbond glue just for more of a quick permanent so they didn't slide around fixed, or a couple other people had responded that the Type-On quick glue was another option for gluing these down as well, but they all suggested that I could have glued these while they were still wet. So I'm just sharing that in this video because, like I said, I'd already done this project before I had gotten all the responses, and you all shared your wonderful knowledge with me. And now this piece probably glued the best for me, only because when I flip it over, you can see it's still a little bit damp. So I think they're onto something that you do this white. See how it's not as white underneath. This one glued the best for me because it was not completely set up. So I think you're all onto something, and you're definitely right. So this got the tightest seal, but I just went around, same thing, the E6000 glue, really tried to work. So when I would spread it out, I know I was using my fingers. I can get it off my fingers, but that was the easiest way for me to spread it out on the petals. And I did actually get a little bit of video of this one. As you could see, the leaf stem broke in half, but then again, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to get it glued on, and then I'm going to be painting these pieces. I can mix up a little texture paint. That's why I'm sharing with you, to trust the process. Don't think, oh my gosh, I've got to throw that away. I've got to make a new piece. No, you don't. I absolutely love that texture paint. It's a little bit of a filler because I found I tested out when I first did these of trying to apply extra glue. That doesn't really work. I think the texture paint works perfectly to fill in any of the gaps, any of the little cracks, any of the breaks. So just trust the process. Don't get stressed because a piece broke. We can glue it back together. We can paint over and hide it. Now, and this one is where I started adding on to the Starbond glue because I can get that to dry in 15 seconds, especially as I had 4 sides of this crate that I wanted to glue them on. And then I'm definitely glad that I got a little bit of this video too. You just never know, remember what I'm all videoing, because how much can you see me gluing on something? But I'm glad that I'm sharing because the one sunflower, all the petals just came apart from the center. But there again, I was able to glue it on, and I really think it was the air dry, that Clear Brand air dry clay, guys. It was one, you'd think, oh, it's too moist, but then when it dried, it was too dry. It just didn't have enough substance to do what I needed it to do. Not saying that it's not good for some other project, it just was not good for what I was using it for. Okay, now we can finally get to painting these pieces. Okay, well, still a little prep because I Not really remembering everything about my air dry clay, who I used, who I didn't use. I want to go ahead and seal my air dry clay in using some shellac. That's just going to even out the porosity. So when I go to, because this is a little bit different technique, I'm going to actually be painting these to distress them, not adding on paint and then wax to distress them. I'm going to actually paint the black to distress them. So yep, I'm going to go ahead and paint every one of these pieces using the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in one and giving them all an undercoat of black. So I did decide that this had a beautiful finish on the inside of it. I didn't feel the need to paint the inside of this little cubby, so I spent the time taping it off to keep that natural wood color before spray painting the outside of it black. Then I also was going to paint that crate cubby. That handle was a little bit more brown than I wanted it to be, so it's going to get a fresh coat of black paint also. Then after all the pieces were spray painted black and then they were dried, I went ahead and sealed them all in using the Rust-Oleum clear coat and matte. It is definitely so much nicer painting cubbies, anything you have to stick your hand into or it has slats with a sprayer. So I'm using my Graco True Coat 360 sprayer with some Rust-Oleum chalk paint, the white linen, to spray these pieces. So it took me about 2 coats to cover, spraying those pieces with the Graco sprayer. Now I'm going in with that same Rust-Oleum chalk paint, the white linen, and I'm mixing up a little bit thicker of a paste with some baking soda to make some texture paint. So what that's going to do is that's going to help me. I'm going to go in with a paintbrush. I'm going to look for any gaps, anywhere where it had cracked, and I'm going to fill them in using this type of paint. And now I'm going to go ahead with a wet wipe and I'm going to really try to smooth as much as I can out any of that texture paint, take a lot of that off of the flat area best as I can. And as you see, as I'm using that wet wipe, it's already starting to do what I wanted to do and showing that black through. So this is the technique I wanted to try with these molds. I wanted to see, can I paint it and can I go back and water distress to show the black the way that I really love to paint a piece. Even though I love that pottery look, I wanted to see if I could achieve the same look of painting things black, sealing that black in, and then chalk painting it with the Rust-Oleum to make all the details pop. And oh yes, I can. I'm already starting to love it as that black is popping through and showing all these beautiful details of the sunflower. And now I'm going to go on just all the sharp edges of this little cubby box, this little magazine holder, just trying to have that wet wipe in my finger because I love how easily the Rust-Oleum chalk paint distresses, but it might distress a little too easy. So if you lay your wet wipe on a surface you don't want, it might be pulling off that paint faster than you want. So as I'm going through and distressing this piece, I did not film me filling in. So when I had the 3 pieces of that edge molding, I filled that in with the texture paint. And then doing the sunflower pieces, I did the same thing. The one that was really broken up, the texture paint went in just fine to blend everything together. Now for this crate caddy, I'm just going to go in with my little mouse Black & Decker sander, and I'm just going to go to town. It is a rough, made to look like it's been used and abused, so I'm just going to go in with my sander and give it a nice sanding. Some of the black's going to show through, some of that natural wood's going to show through, some of the stain that the manufacturer had put in. That's okay. I want it to look like this overly aged piece. So if you were wondering, where's the crates detail? Well, my whole plan for this one at the beginning was never to put one of the molds on it, was to put this beautiful IOD stamp on it. Oh yes, I'm going to. We are in sunflower season right now here in Michigan, and probably wherever else is in sunflower season, but I am in love with this sunflower stamp, so I'm just using some of the Stays On ink pad. Probably got a little bit of IOD ink on it, only to refreshen it up so it is nice and black. And then, yep, I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it on this crate. And unlike the molds on that other sunflower that I had to cut in half, this one didn't matter because even though the edges stuck over, it wasn't really sticking over. And then my initial plan with this also on this little crate was to put a little bit of the sunflower on there and then actually adding the sunflower word on this little crate also. This is just a random stamp set that I had found when I was out thrifting. The letters are just a wonderful size. So after getting all my letters hopefully spelled right, I'm using my flexible mount to grab them off on the sticky side. And then when I flip that over, I'll go along a line and making sure that they're all in line and then getting them all inked up. This Rust-Oleum chalk paint that I use needs to be sealed in, so I'm going to go and do some flipping and flopping. I'm going to go ahead and get these sprayed in with some Rust-Oleum clear coat and matte. What I meant by flipping and flopping is some of the backside, some of the cubbies, some of the handles. So the nice thing about this Rust-Oleum clear coat is it actually dries like in 15 minutes. So you just a nice enough light misting to get them covered to seal that chalk paint in. After that clear coat is dry, I'm going to go ahead and remove any of the tape, any of the protection I put on. And I did that same thing because I knew I was going to have to flip and flop this box a little bit to get that thick handle. So I had taped off the bottom of this box also. So I'm just going around with some sandpaper just to get off that hard, crusty edge where the paint builds up. Now I'm just going to go in, and one more level of finish is some Varathane finish wax on all these pieces just to make them sure that they're nice and smooth and sealed.
Okay, so what did you think of the wooden items and me putting IOD molds on them. Yep, I had a lot. Yep, I won't buy that Crayola brand again. My Hobby Lobby was out of the other that I had, and so yep, it's so hard to wait for things to come in the mail. And I really loved working with those molds. So that's okay, but the end results is what matters, and I hope that I persevered, and I hope that I showed you all, anybody that might get frustrated, how just to work through it. I mean, we paid for the stuff, we paid for the item, we gave our time up to do this craft, so let's see it all the way to the end. So I hope that I have inspired you in any way to look at thrift store finds in a new way, and I hope I have inspired you to stay with it. Don't get frustrated, just be patient. It's just a craft. If at the end it doesn't work out, you do have money into it, but it does happen. But most of the time I can work through it. So again, thanks for watching today's video, guys. And if you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up and a quick comment. And if you're new to the channel and checking us out for the first time, please hit that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know when we upload a new video. And we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.